Okay, now I'm going to talk a little bit about a tool that's really become popular probably across the nation. Is these little Honda generators with the built-in floodlight on them. A really handy tool. It's one of those tools that we use a lot on our ladder company. It has a lot of uses. This one happens to be a 1,000-watt one, which I think is a nice size. It's not too heavy to carry. It's portable. They have 2,000 watts, but now you're starting to get to the area where it's just a little bit hard to carry it around the rear of a house or carrying up an aerial ladder, put it in a platform to get it to the roof. Say you have a Class 2 building and you have to do some roof work up there. Nice tool to take up to the roof. If you get these too big, then you start losing a little bit of that portability. So I think the 1,000-watt is pretty good. Has a built-in 500-watt floodlight right in it. There's a vent on the top. We usually carry ours open that allows air into the gas tank. If you carry it off and you forget to open it, it'll run for several minutes, 5 minutes even, and then all of a sudden it quits running. So if that happens at a fire, the first thing to check is this. It needs some air in there to allow the gas to go through. So we carry ours on, that way we don't have to think about it. Generally, when you get to the scene and you got to start it, this one's been run, but we carry it on choke and we carry it with the switch on. So at the scene of a fire, all we have to do is reach down and pull the rope. It should be running. I'm going to take it off a choke because it has been running. I'll start it up. If you notice, it's running kind of a fast RPM, and that's good. Underneath here, economy throttle, and when it's kicked on, it runs the generator way down slow, and then it'll kick on as I turn on different things. It's to save gas. Well, we really don't use much gas with these. This thing will run about 6 hours on a tank of gas, and that's less than a gallon. Maybe even as long as 8 hours. They don't use much gas. So we generally just leave our in that position so that it's generating and it's running good. Because you know, we're going out when it's cold sometimes. Another habit, a good habit to have, is start your generator, especially when the weather's cold, especially when you're out on that fire and it's 20 below zero or 10 below. Start this thing up, let it run for a while, then kick in your light. It's a lot less, it lets the generator warm up a little bit first, then kick on your light. We use this a lot. Our rear outside man, when he goes to the rear first, he generally takes a ground ladder, but his second trip back, he'll carry one of these to light up the rear of the fire ground. He'll set this out in the backyard, kind of a natural floodlight of the rear of the building. We also have another light that's a little special. We have 75 foot of cord laying on this one, and we have the house plug on it. And we use that to light up. So now we have this outside lighting up the rear of the house. We like our outside rear vent person to run this in the back door. If there's a back door, commercial building, same thing. Force the door, get the rear door open, and run this cord, stick it in there. So we have enough cord that we can get away from this generator and stick it in the back door. They can move it around if they need to, but it also helps people on the inside find the rear door. All of a sudden in the smoke they see a light and they know we went back there and stuck this light in there. So now we've pretty much utilizing the full capacity of this generator. 2 500-watt lights, 1,000 watts. Now just for the heck of it, I'm going to hook in another light. I'll turn it on. It's handling it for a minute. We've kicked the circuit breaker on this Honda. We've kicked the circuit breaker on it. So what we got to do to reset it, the newer ones, all you do to reset the circuit breaker is shut the generator off, and I should shut the light off too, but once I shut it off, it resets itself. Now when I restart it, it should should have reset. So that's how on the newer Honda generators you reset the circuit breaker. Go in the switch and shut it clear off. Another little feature in these that a lot of people probably have missed is they have what they call an oil alert. If the oil gets low on the motor, to protect the motor, it will shut it off. So if it's low on oil, but it'll also happen if you have this on a tilted angle. Say maybe you want to light up the back of the house and it's set up a little bit and you decide to prop this thing up on a piece of hose or whatever. So we're going to tilt this, and I'm exaggerating it a little, but it'll run for a while. In a little bit you'll hear it start sputtering a little, and pretty soon it'll shut off. And that's exactly what will happen at the fire ground. You'll start it, it'll be angled, and you saw it ran for a while. But eventually the oil goes away from this little sensor in there and it shuts it off. The gas Honda Ram fans do the same thing. There's an oil alert in there, so if you have them propped up, and that can be confusing, you get it running, you work a little bit, and also it's not running. And generally what you'll do, you take it from the propped up part, start it again, and then it'll start right up, you prop it back up, and leave, and it shuts down again. That's an oil alert doing that. I bring that up because also if they get a little bit low on oil at the firehouse and you're checking the morning checks and it won't start, or generally what happens, it will start and it will run for a little bit and then quit, because what happens while it's sitting there, all the oil in the cylinder nut is drained down into the sump, so there's enough oil in there to start it. Once it starts, that oil is being pumped up in for lubrication for the cylinders, and that little switch will be exposed now, and all of a sudden it'll shut itself off. So before you send it to the shop, check the oil, check it, and we're talking just a few ounces. That's all it takes to get it up where it has an adequate amount of oil in it. I'll point out some of the little controls on these small Honda generators. Here's what I was talking about, the economy throttle, this little switch here. When it's on, it won't rev up as much. It'll only rev up when it's under a load, and it's to save fuel. Nice feature if you're using this as a homeowner or a business. But for us, we generally leave it off so that when we get seen with fire, it's revved up some and it's producing the electricity at full capacity. Down here, there's a little light. It's overload. It'll start blinking before the thing shuts down. When that thing starts blinking, it means you've overloaded it. You're trying to draw more than 1,000 watts. So real quick, you got to shut something off like this, hit the button, or unplug something. Generally when you a generator, and the same with your onboard, you can overload them. And if they're kicking a breaker, you're trying to draw too much electric. So you got a lot of options. One, you just take a light or a fan or something out of the series to reduce the load. The other thing you can do is move your fan or whatever you're operating closer to the source of electric and get rid of some cord. Because again, the smaller the cord, the more resistance it's going to use, and it's going to kick circuit breakers. So you can get closer to the source and a bigger cord and shorten the length of your cord. So those are some things you can do. Motors, electric motors, one of the things that it may say on something that it requires 600 watts to operate. Well, that's true, but generally an electric motor will use almost 4 times the electrical energy to start it than it does to run it. So you may see start up 2,000 watts and run 600, and that's not unusual. So you got to kind of keep that in mind with electric motors. Even though the wattage to run it's way low, getting it started is the problem. It just takes a lot of electric to start them. Unless there's a capacitor on them, they draw at least 4 times usually what it does to run them. So that's just something on electric to keep in mind. There is an oil alert light on here. It's over here. If it starts flashing, it's low on oil, and then pretty soon it's going to shut off, just like it did earlier. So we saw that. We have room for extra connections here. You can plug right into here, or you can plug into over here. So you can utilize the capacity of this generator. Maybe you're running a drill and a Sawzall. Usually this will run a drill. I think it'll run a Sawzall most of the time, unless the Sawzall gets bound up, and then it may kick the circuit breaker on it.